Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys a brand new set of spoilers of Boruto TBV Vortex Chapter 11, and today we have full spoilers for the chapter. As a reminder, the official chapter drops tomorrow, so expect the review likely this weekend because the editor who works on the Boruto TBV Vortex reviews is going to need some time to cook up the review, so if we get it out sooner, that'd be amazing. However, I thank you guys for your patience and your support waiting for the review. Like usual, when we get these full spoilers, I'm going to split the baby in half and I'm going to discuss the things that stand out to me and what I think you guys will find most interesting, but for the stuff I feel needs the most context, I'm going to wait until the full chapter releases before I can go any further in terms of passing any judgment or criticisms, but there's a lot going on in this chapter, which, to restate, is not 80 pages like people have been going crazy with that rumor online. The day we get an 80-page chapter for Boruto is the day that it's moved to Jump Square, another Shonen Jump monthly magazine, or it's moved to Jump Giga, a quarterly magazine, which as a Black Clover fan, I'm telling you, you don't want that. Waiting 4 to 5 months for a chapter, or Ikimoto and his staff of 3 assistants, they take the next month off. So without much further ado, let's get into the spoilers, which are coming to us courtesy of PewPiece, a reliable leaker in the fandom. There aren't raw scans yet, so obviously there won't be any shown on this video. And even if there were, I don't use raw scans for these videos as a rule of thumb. So in the chapter itself, we have the battle of Hidari versus Sarada and the battle of Himawari versus Jura. And one things that I absolutely hated deep down in my soul and had a feeling was going to happen did indeed happen, and I'm absolutely sick. Himawari has healed Inojin from the point of near death, and she transferred over the healing properties of Kurama's power to Inojin to save him from being killed. Now, fake out deaths, they happen in Shonen. I am used to it after seeing my guy Saito have a fake out death in Rurouni Kenshin, Hinata's fake out death in the Pain arc, where we had to wait several weeks in the manga in order to learn that Pain missed a vital organ, to all the numerous fake out deaths she had in One Piece and Fairy Tail. I expected it, but I'm not a big fan of this, and yet at the same time, I'm not mad at it because it is to be expected, and there's a strong implication of how she was able to heal Inojin here in a way that's different from what we saw with Naruto that I'll touch on in the review when I've had a chance to see the manga panels properly themselves. Now, we also have more of the battle of Himawari versus Jura, and it is absolutely heating up. And Himawari, she's telling the members of Team 10, I need you guys to back off because this fight is well beyond any of their power levels. And Jura even takes a moment to praise Shikadai and say, hey, you're making the intelligent decision. And he takes this praise a step further by telling him, hey, I'm going to remember your name now because they will definitely meet again in the future, which, wow, that's a pretty big cosign for Shikadai right there because it's potential foreshadowing for the future of the character beyond the confrontation with Matsuri, since she did say back in chapter 5 that she could feel a strong connection to the members of Team 10 as well as her connection with Konohamaru. It was just stronger with Konohamaru, hence Konohamaru is her target. There's a bit more that I want to say with this Jura reveal with Shikadai, but I want to wait for a little bit more context on the expressions and the way things are paneled, just like I said with the Himawari thing healing Inojin, because I think I can see what's going on with both of those characters, Himawari and Jura. I just need to physically see the panels themselves. Now, the next thing we have is the battle. It kicks off in a high gear, and the Bijudama battle is going back and forth. It's getting super intense between Himawari and Jura, which it should be worth noting that Jura, he's taking more interest in Himawari as time's going on because he's seeing that rapid rate in which she's growing, which, Jesus, this is further proof that Minato was so much of a genius that his genius genetics, they had to skip a generation because Naruto's kids, they're a lot more smarter and more talented than him at that same age, where he needed stick figures to understand how chakra natures work, and he needed pop-up books and building blocks to grasp the more complex teachings. However, even with Himawari catching on to using Kurama's power this quickly due to her high affinity rate being significantly higher than Naruto's, there are drawbacks to her trying to use this much power at once, and I think that's a very fair trade-off. Allow me to explain. So it fits into what I've been saying here on the channel for the last few months now, really for last year, which is that Himawari is being patterned after Gohan from Dragon Ball. Just as we saw that that kid only had a year of training, was suddenly skilled enough to hold his own against Vegeta after he defeated Goku, and he was then shown 6 months later slapboxing with a member of the Ginyu Force, Goldo, who was stronger than base Goku from the prior arc itself. We saw that when he pulled into too much of his power, when he went into that rage mode, he wasn't able to sustain it. And this is where that fight is going. And we're getting the same thing here with Himawari. When she's enraged, there's a cooling off that is coming with the output of her power as the fight itself is extending, which I think that's warranted. It gives the character more room to grow, and it keeps her on a sliding scale. You're going to see her have these moments and outbursts where she's using the power when she gets emotional, and it's going to put her on a sliding scale to stand up to whoever it is that she's fighting against, even if it's only for a brief period. Now, the Sarada versus Hidari section, this is where things get really controversial here. So Hidari reveals that he can't properly use the Chidori, and this opened up a much expected can of worms. And I'm starting to see right now why right before the chapter drops, the official Boruto database updated the Chidori users and reminded people how the jutsu works, because even the people that run the official website know that a lot of new fans or older fans, they need a refresher. Hidari tells us that without the Sharingan, he cannot use the Chidori right away, and the official database for Boruto states what we are told numerous times in Naruto's manga, and what Sasuke flat out says to Boruto: without the Sharingan, you cannot use the Chidori. It has too many weaknesses. And as we saw when Naruto battled Sasuke in volume 72, the moment that Sasuke's Sharingan cut off, Naruto was able to deck this man in the chin because Sasuke couldn't counterattack. You have people that keep bringing up Kakashi used it when he was a kid and he didn't have the Sharingan when he first used it. And the problem with that argument is that people keep leaving out the rest of what happened in Naruto volume 27, which is the last volume before the 2.5-year time skip of Naruto took place. In Naruto chapter 239, Kakashi states that the Chidori is a jutsu he's still working on and that it's not complete, which we know is because he was trying and failing to add a lightning release change in chakra nature to the rasengan. In chapter 240, Minato, after saving Kakashi from getting his head cut off, tells him that the jutsu is incomplete and it has too many vulnerabilities due to its greatest strength and the speed and the destructive power, and that those are really its greatest weakness because it leaves him too open for a counterattack. In chapter 244, Kakashi states that the jutsu is now complete because of Obito's Sharingan, because the weaknesses that Minato listed out, they're now eliminated via the Sharingan Eye Insight. Thus force, the jutsu is complete. That's why Kakashi's not listed on the database for the jutsu, despite Kakashi being the one that created the jutsu, and most importantly, neither was Hidari. Both of them can perform it, but they don't have mastery of the jutsu, because they cannot overcome the weakness that comes with the Sharingan, hence Kakashi made Purple Lightning. And the manga chapter right now, it is spoon feeding that answer to us right now multiple times to cut down on the confusion via statements as well as via what you're seeing take place in the chapter itself. That's why Sarada was able to tag Hidari in the last chapter. No Sharingan means you cannot use the precognition of the Eye Insight to predict the movements and make the sudden adjustments that are needed to land an attack, which is how Sarada with the Sharingan could read Hidari's movements and adjust in a way where she tagged him with their own Chidori and he couldn't do anything about it. That doesn't change the speed of the Chidori that was being used. He was aiming at her seriously, but the story is showing us in plain sight that this is what the weakness to the Chidori is. Rinnegan does not have precognition like the Sharingan, unless you have the Tomo Rinnegan that Sasuke had. So this bit of information that we have further evidence about the limitations of the Shinjuu themselves. And this is really important lore to take note of. So Hidari, he might be made from Sasuke's chakra. He might share his appearance with Sasuke. But what we're seeing is that those who've been bitten by a Shinjuu like Sasuke, when their Shinjuu awakens, their kekkei genkai does not transfer over. Otherwise, Hidari would have had the Sharingan and would have been able to safely perform the Chidori. And honestly, I love this bit of lore here because it at least means that there are limitations and more of them coming to these Awakened Shinjuu. And most importantly, someone like Hidari is gonna have limitations that can be exploited and used against him, which I think that's very smart writing. The next thing we have here is Konohamaru gets involved with the fight, and we see the weaknesses of Hidari trying to use the Chidori once again, and they're being exploited once again. Because guess what? He doesn't have the Sharingan to use the Eye Insight to adjust to sudden movement. So this time it's Konohamaru, who, while he isn't fast enough to outright dodge the attack, that should be worth noting, which that would have been some crazy leveling up for Konohamaru, who at the end of Boruto was only knocking on the door to being Kage level power. And by knocking on the door to Kage level power, I mean Kage level being the bare minimum entry point, being sealed Orochimaru, who couldn't properly fight and was battling Four-Tails Naruto, and the Gold and Silver brothers, who had ingested Kurama's DNA into their bodies by eating Kurama from the inside. But what we do see here is that Konohamaru, at the very least, was able to level up enough to where he could react to exploit the weaknesses by displaying a new wind release jutsu that works very similar to a jutsu we've seen earlier in the series. So he makes this wind release barrier, which is based off the description of the jutsu, very similar to Shojoji's wind release jutsu that was able to deflect Boruto's rasengan and able to negate a large amount of damage from his compression rasengan to a point where the attack that should have killed him, according to Kakashi, only knocked Shojoji unconscious and left him in need of medical treatment. However, like I pointed out in the Patreon Discord server, when you look at the official teaser that was released yesterday, you have to look very closely, but you can see that Hidari is holding on to Konohamaru's leg, which right now it makes a lot of sense and it is hilarious. So Sarada, she exposed the weakness of the Chidori to him, the inability to adjust to sudden movement. So Hidari says, okay, bet. He grabs Konohamaru's leg to prevent this guy from getting away. Yo, I can't even get mad at that. Like, my man's like, yo, you ain't gonna fool me. You ain't going nowhere. Grabs hold of this man's leg and tries to use a Chidori in order to penetrate him from behind. And this is what leads to him using that wind release barrier. Now, we gotta chalk one up for the people who say Boruto doesn't carry over things from Naruto. It's completely out of touch with the series. There's nothing that links to Naruto, because this is clearly changing chakra nature relationships being shown here. Wind release is superior to lightning release. Who would have thought it? In Konohamaru, by making a barrier, which is a change in chakra shape being applied, which that in turn amps up the power of a jutsu, Konohamaru is able to reflect the attack enough to not be killed by it because he used the correct change in chakra nature to have an advantage over it. Man, don't you love it when stuff like this happens? They say they missed when this was a story about ninjas, and now we're seeing ninja tactics being used. Guess this is what happens when you read fights that aren't just focused on Naruto and Sasuke. But hey, who am I? I'm just a guy that likes to read Naruto. The last thing that we have here is Boruto has teleported to the scene where Sarada is, because the Toad has been carrying around the Flying Raijin marker, and it appears as if Boruto is now using a shadow clone, which that's going to be very interesting given that shadow clones, they do split the chakra evenly. So each clone only has 50% of his power. And that's so the thing is there's a lot more that happened in the chapter, but I want to wait until I get raw scans or until I get a chance to read the official tomorrow. The review, again, will likely be out this weekend after my editors had time to cook up the review. Just based on what we have here, this is probably going to be an 18 to 24 minute review, maybe even 30 minutes. Just depends on if I feel a need to expound on other things. But in the meantime, don't forget to check out that 2.5 hour Boruto video that you see here on the left, and don't forget to share it if you haven't. And you can also click here to the right for my full Chainsaw Man Dating Denji arc recap that goes over the entire story on my Anime Explained channel.